This is Robert Martellacci of the MindShare Learning Report, Canada's learning and technology e-magazine, and welcome to this special edition of This Week in Canadian EdTech. I'm honored to have join me for a MindShare Learning Moment Dr. Alec Couros, Professor of EdTech and Media Education, researcher, consultant, and connected educator. He's a keynoter, speaker, and scholar with 4 kids in the education system. From the University of Regina. Thank you for joining me this morning, Al.
Thanks for this, Robert. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, challenging times. And one of the greatest challenges besides staying healthy is keeping kids learning. And you're at the forefront of it on both ends with your kids in elementary and high school and as a university professor. How are things going?
Given my 4 kids are in the house and you know, they're not at school as most would know. You know, they might run in here, but it's an interesting time. You know, people were remarking that it's Friday today. The references towards the weekends are kind of gone in some ways. You know, what's Friday, what's Monday,
right?
What's the weekend? When does work start? When does it end? So I think the importance of scheduling your day, I think, is becoming really important. But, you know, it is just really created a lot of chaos in our K-12 system, our post-secondary system, in families. You know, obviously with, you know, incredibly high unemployment due to this, you know, what's going on in the world, people concerned for their health. You know, I think a lot of what's going on is it's really making us consider what a society looks like, what the role of government is, what the role of school is, how do we come together as communities and families. It's really just put everything on its head, and it's a really interesting time to live through this. And I think we'll be talking about this for a very, very long time. And I'm hoping that anyone listening out there, you know, is keeping safe.
Absolutely. And it's never been a more transformational time in terms of technology and the impact that it's making. In our case, we're utilizing a Zoom platform, and for teachers and kids to extend and continue their learning. How is that going for your kids that are in elementary and high school?
So yeah, I'm in Saskatchewan, and it's been interesting transition. Our teachers were given, our kids were given the option to come home a couple of weeks ago on the Monday, or they could stay for the rest of the week. I think a lot of parents, you know, brought their kids home if they were able to do so. Then of course, you know, teachers were wrapping up. They're only like a month or so into their semester. So teachers had the last week kind of to sort of, you know, think about online learning and how they're going to support students. And school, I think, starts, or they have this week, I guess. And then next week, you know, they're back to work. And what that means is probably working from home, is probably supporting students from an online space. But, you know, given some of the inequities, not every kid's going to have the laptop or the iPads that, you know, some do. So teachers have to support all kids at all grade levels without a lot of perhaps tech competency in all cases. You know, there's lots of very, very tech savvy teachers, but then there's some that are on the other opposite spectrum that are thrown into remote learning, as many of them are calling it. So it's really a bit of an upheaval. One of the interesting things in Saskatchewan, and this is just in terms of assessment, like I've got a kid in high school and 3 in elementary. The elementary kids in Saskatchewan were just pushed to the next level, whereas the high school approach, they decided to basically, if you were passing, if you had a particular grade at, you know, the time of the intervention, you're given that grade and you're going to the next semester. If you were failing, you're just given an automatic 50. So I don't know if that's a perfect solution, but it is, you know, it's a very tricky time. And like, I don't know, I mean, it's reasonable, you know, in most cases, you know, it's going to, you know, come back at teachers who have to help and kids who have to, you know, pick up those skills. But I think it's a really interesting time, and there's a lot of tough decisions to be made right now.
So you're on pause for this week, teachers, a bit of a break. and then presumably the province is crafting a strategy on what learning will look like going forward.
Yeah, I think divisions here will have some say in that, but ultimately school goes on. But what happens after this in terms of assessment, in terms of a grade, I believe that high school kids can improve their grade.
Right.
Kids have the right to get more support, but in terms of the actual guidelines, like how much interaction you might have with the children that you are teaching, that's really up in the air right now. And I think that's the same thing in other provinces. Not,
That's
it's
right.
similar to like exactly what is that actually going to look like. And
Hmm.
I've never seen such interactivity on Twitter with teachers provincially and nationally, and in the U.S. and beyond, just scrambling to find tools, to find expertise, to find resources, and not just teachers but parents, right? Because parents.
Absolutely. And you were one of the early pioneers on Twitter, and you've got over 130,000 followers. So you've really made your mark, and we were all early adopters, and now necessity is the mother of invention when it comes to some of the middle and late adopters, isn't it?
Yeah, it's harder certainly to find, if you're looking for resources when you're new to Twitter, it's you kind of get lost in that. So I'm very fortunate, and many others are very fortunate to have established a strong personal learning network
Right.
that can ask for support and help. But the parents that don't have that, or are new to this, or
Hmm.
teachers who've never done online learning or never considered it, or don't use much tech in their class, and I don't wish them this on them. They probably had really good reasons not to use the technologies, but they're going to struggle a bit more, just for the fact that it's a different paradigm. It's different to teach and communicate and have presence with kids. And so I think that's why I've seen universities and the and the K-12 sector really try to develop resources or strategies. How do we actually reach kids in school? And the incentives are gone too. Like if a kid now had a 37 and gets a 50 in class, they in a perfect world, it's kind of cool now that the grade is already out there. You can improve
Right.
your grade if you'd like. But there's a lot of kids right now bored at home. They're not being able to see their friends. They're worried for their health. There's a lot of stress in the air. It doesn't make exactly for the best learning environment.
No, it doesn't. And Alberta seems to have crafted an interesting strategy for elementary, middle, and high school, and it's so many hours a week. No one's expecting kids to sit and learn all day long, because that's
Right.
the reality. Is they got to get outside, run around a little bit, expend some energy, because I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I was one of those hyperactive kids that was always doing sports and activities.
Yeah.
So as a parent, and I'm fortunate, my oldest kids are done university and they're working and in accounting, and it's busy season, so they're focused. My daughter is in university finishing her online courses, and so it's pretty quiet in our household right now,
Sure.
actually. But you as a professor, you've what's interesting is there's no real shift for you, because you've been teaching online for a number of years, I understand.
Yeah, my courses, we had to take a pause for a week, as just the entire university paused for a week to kind of rejig what was going on. But I go back to online courses. But there have been changes to my syllabus, which is rare. You don't ever change the syllabus, but this is something that the universities have given license to, because typically you see a syllabus as a contract. But
Right.
ultimately, you have to think people are now, in some cases unemployed, working from home, have children at home, have different responsibilities. There are different anxieties. That is it reasonable to keep the same assessments that you have here, and missing some time as well? So everything is an upheaval. And then my colleagues who who, some of them who've taught online, some have taught blended, and some have never really used much technology. So we run the whole gamut in terms of technological competencies and literacies across the university. they're scrambling, and the university is scrambling to support them. Even thinking about, we have this many professors, we all of a sudden need this many more Zoom licenses, and we have to ramp up the use of Moodle for people who've never used it, and then there's workshops and all that happening. And
Right.
obviously, that's a lot for 1 week,
And you are no doubt being tapped as an expert in educational technology to lend your hand.
I mean, I've heard from K-12 sector, lots of people who are looking for help, like from individual teachers to administrators to to others who are wanting to do workshops or finding resources or whatever else. Yeah, it's been a busy time, lots of emails and calls, and I'm just trying to help.
Right. And to that point, that's part of the inspiration around the Canadian Online Learning Emergency Consortium in this crisis. And thank you for stepping up to be an advisor on this group. We felt collectively, a number of thought leaders, including C21 Canada, and we want to make an impact, and we want to support and keep the learning happening as districts and provinces and territories transition and pivot. The team we put together could really help accelerate that, and there's no costs involved to anyone, because this is what we are doing as Canadians. They are caring for each other to support each other.
Yeah, it's needed, and there's some of the big players out there that can support themselves, but also reaching out, I think, to smaller. I mean, in my case, a lot of the people who've called me are administrators in First Nation controlled institutions who feel perhaps a bit out of the network, I guess, in terms of getting some support. So I think whatever's done is that we continue to support each other in our institutions, but also looking and help trying our best to support others who may not have the technological resources, the human resources.
100%. And the equity piece definitely comes into play. So we've reached out to the telcos, and we're working with the Canadian government, some venture funds to kick in support for this, so that we can address the equity piece, which is a huge concern to the school districts. We get that. We understand that. Yeah. And
in Ontario, they've been talking about, there's going to be students that don't have the technology, and
right.
There's at least been some promises from government to help bridge that digital divide.
And I was speaking with the CIO of PDSB yesterday, and they've got thousands of devices sitting idle in schools that they may leverage. And I've heard of utilizing the busing to continue the breakfast programs and getting resources to kids and computers. So necessity is the mother of invention, really. And we'll look back at this, I think, when the dust settles, and hopefully sooner than later, that this will have been one of the most transformational times in our history from an innovation perspective.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping it's this moment, or something that actually changes education, the way we look at education, the way we value education,
right?
The way we collaborate across sectors. I'm hoping. It's hard to be optimistic these days, but I think you have to.
Absolutely. And taking the best of the best practices from face-to-face and online, and kind of melding them together, and utilizing the right tool at the right time is really, what drives the way I work and learn.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. With that, Alec, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I'll let you get back to your work and your kids learning, and it's a super busy time. We really value your contribution to the conversation.
Thanks, Robert. It's always great to talk to you.
That was Alec Couros, professor at the University of Regina, EdTech thought leader, keynoter. My name is Robert Martellacci of the MindShare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.MindShare Learning to get your latest issue. Until next time, keep the learning curve steep.